I opened a small trading account and some bad things started to happen. Alright, let me give you the quick backstory in case this is the first time you've come across this channel. My name's Nicholas and I've been trading for over 10 years, and in fact you may have seen this video before where I was talking about my experiences of making what I think is big money from trading. Now, the time that I was talking about in that video started almost a decade ago, and since that time things have been very consistent and dependable with my trading. Yes, there have been some ups and downs like everyone goes through, but really it's been the same approach week in, week out, and things have been pretty smooth sailing. That is, until June this year. You see, when you've been trading the same way for so many years, things can get a bit repetitive and boring. And just like a relationship, when things start to get stale, you might look to spice things up. So I was talking to my team about maybe doing a trading challenge. Now, I'm sure that just like me, you've seen many social media traders doing these big challenges. But for me, there are always a number of flaws that almost discredit the whole thing. The first one tends to be that they don't tell people they're doing the trading challenge until after they've already started it and gained some momentum. So technically they could be starting one every week and only telling everyone as soon as they succeed in one of those. The second thing is that they tend to use some obscure broker that no one's ever heard of and they just happen to have some sort of personal relationship with. Now, we all know how data can be manipulated, and I think that's a big red flag. And the third thing is that they're not practicing what they preach in terms of good trading and good risk management. They have these drawdowns that are like half the account or more, and they're basically betting the entire account on every single trade. They always have some excuse about why they're doing it, but essentially they're not showing what's possible with good trading. They're just showing what's possible with gambling. So my team and I decided that we wouldn't do a trading challenge, but we would do a trading competition. Just amongst ourselves, we're only a small team, but we would see who could get the best performance in June. 1 month of trading, who could get the highest return. Now, we didn't want it to be that you could bet the farm on every trade, have this big Hail Mary trade on the last day of the month just to get ahead. Instead, it had to be showing what could be done through normal trading, good risk management, and seeing who could perform the best, not as a gambler, but as a trader. So we had some rules. Rule number 1, no obscure brokers. We would have to use mainstream brokers, either regulated by the UK FCA or a major equivalent. Rule number 2, you can't risk more than 2% of your account per trade. Now, this doesn't mean that the banked loss has to be lower than 2%. It means that even the drawdown while the trade is still open can't exceed 2%. Rule number 3, however, is that if it goes above 2% by accident, like if there's slippage, then you can go over it twice in the month as long as it's a justifiable mistake. However, rule number 4 is that if you exceed 3.5% even once, mistake or not, you are disqualified. So those were the rules to keep things honest and to keep it as trading and not gambling. And then just to add some extra pressure, we told our members in our community about it. It's going to be a good one, particularly for me as I win our internal competition, much to the dismay of Connor. And announced it on one of our Tuesday Facebook live sessions. Our internal challenge started this week, so my team are up against it. They're going to try and outperform me this month. And yes, it did disappoint me that most people seem to be Team Connor. Hello, darkness, my old friend. But it's okay, those are the same people that are no longer invited to the Christmas party. Now, if the aim of this whole thing was to spice things up, we definitely achieved that. Things got competitive. There was plenty of trash talking, admittedly most of it coming from me, and I even got turned into a meme. But needless to say, at the start of June we were all ready. We'd all opened a new account. I had a small sub account, deposited a small amount of money, nothing too significant, but we were ready to go. I knew I had to back up my trash talk. I had to perform really well and win this competition, otherwise our community and my team would never let me live this down. And also, if I performed really badly, it may even harm my reputation. So I went in with a bit of a game plan. First, I was going to be more active than I normally am with my trading. This means more hours each day, and you can't quite see it there, but it says shorter time horizons on the trades. Second, I'd have an aggressive scale-in policy. If there was even a tiny chance of getting a scale-in on a profitable trade, I would take it. Even if it meant I only end up with a break-even trade, I will take in those scale-ins to maximize my profit. Third, if I have any sort of lead or a profit buffer, I'll use that to my advantage and take more risks. I know that if I'm relying on my normal system, I can slowly build up that account, but if I want to really take the lead, I need to use those advantages to push it even further. And fourth, and most importantly, I would use mind games and trash talk to add some pressure to the others and to keep myself motivated. But the very first trade I opened did not go to plan. It was a loss. Now, I don't mind losses. Losses are just part of the process. I never expected that I was going to finish the whole month with just profitable trades. That wasn't part of the plan. But upon reflection, when I broke down the trade after I'd closed it to figure out what happened, I realized that something wasn't quite right. First of all, it didn't seem like the sort of trade that I would normally open. It didn't quite fit my system and my criteria. And second of all, I lost more on that trade than what I normally would for a similar sort of trade. I lost well over 1%, which was more than I would have allowed. So I guessed that maybe I was experiencing some sort of nerves because of the competition that was affecting my trading. No problem, nerves aren't necessarily the end of the world, and in fact they can be a good thing. So I carried on, and after a week and 1 day, the account was up around 5.5%. It appeared as if everything was going well, but something still wasn't quite right. I knew that I was going to be trading more actively. After all, that was part of my game plan. But it seemed that I wasn't just trading actively, I was actually starting to overtrade. And my decisions with those trades weren't quite as calm and calculated as I know they should be. So I took note of the things that I was experiencing in my trading journal, and in fact I spoke about them on one of our live streams. So here are some of the things that I had written down that I was going through. I was overtrading, like I just mentioned, and I had an increase in loss aversion. I was wanting to close the trades as soon as they built up even some profit, rather than letting them run and continue as I know I should do. So I was having to resort to using mind tricks to stop myself from deviating from my system. And I explained these to some of our members on a webinar, and it's something I'll talk about in a future video, these tricks that you can use to stop yourself deviating from your system at critical moments. But since I was now aware of these issues, I was sure that they were going to stop happening. So I had a bit of a profit buffer now of that 5.5%, so it was time for the second part of the game plan to kick in. It was time to start taking some bigger risks. Now obviously I didn't want to break that rule of risking more than 2% of my account, so I had to be smart about how I took risks. On one of the days, the markets were particularly volatile, and I thought I can trade those volatile movements that I wouldn't normally trade, knowing that I'm only going to risk 2%, but I might catch a bigger move. But this is where the real roller coaster ride started, because my game plan didn't pay off. My account started heading back down towards break even, and for the first time in many years, I was nervous about my trading. There's this common piece of advice that you give to new traders, and it's that you should focus on the percentages with your trades and not the monetary side. So don't focus on how many pounds or dollars you're going to make or lose on each trade, instead just focus on the percentages. This is meant to make you focus more on your system and what you should be doing, rather than how much you're going to make or lose on each trade. But the funny thing is, in this case, I didn't care about the money side. In fact, I said to Connor with one of the trades I had open, I was more nervous about that trade than any of my trades for the last however many years, and all I had riding on that trade was less than the amount of money you'd spend on a round of drinks in a pub. So it wasn't the money side that was bothering me, it was the percentages. So this goes against that advice that everyone's given for many years, because by focusing on the percentages, it was causing me to get off track with my trading and to deviate from my system. You see, losses are just part of the process of good trading. And if you're taking this as a long-term career, then you know that losses here and there don't matter because they're just part of the process where your profitable trades are going to overshadow and outweigh those, and overall you're going to be profitable. But where I had a limited amount of time, it was causing me to not see losses as being part of the process, but actually seeing them as being a setback. And if you see your losses as a setback, you're never going to be in the right mindset for successful trading. I took some more notes in my journal about this. So the symptoms that I was now seeing, on top of the ones that I'd already been seeing before, were that I was now protecting against losses, I was avoiding taking decisions, and I had more of an urgency to revenge trade after I took a loss. And none of this was helped by the fact that I knew at that point in time that I had dropped down to second place in the competition, and suddenly that sense of panic and nervousness kicked in. So this basically continued until there wasn't long left in the competition. I'd had this roller coaster ride of fluctuating between being up 6% and being up only 2%. And I knew that if I continued this performance and didn't figure things out with this limited amount of time left, I was going to lose the whole competition. My solution was to do a deep dive into what was going on in my mind, to be my own performance coach. So I took my trading journal, I sat down and I just started writing, and I didn't stop until I'd got to the bottom of what was going on. I realized that we'd created this artificial situation similar to what beginner traders go through, but in a much more amplified way, where it's very focused on urgency and scarcity. And because of that, it led to me rediscovering some of these symptoms in my trading that I'd left behind me a long time ago. Symptoms that beginner traders tend to have. And this was causing me to lose sight of the quality of my trades and to focus more on the quantity of my trades. Now, I'll talk about those in just a moment and how you can deal with those if you are going through it as well. But before that, let me explain to you what happened next. Right, I knew that I had to shift my focus away from quantity of trades and back towards the quality of trades. I had to somehow forget that we're in a competition, shake off this sense of urgency and scarcity, and trade the way I always trade, according to my system, to be calm and calculated in how I approach the decision making. Now, this might mean that I end up losing the competition because I don't open enough trades, so be it. I knew that my best chance of winning was to focus on doing things according to my normal system. So I stopped my trash talk, I left that all behind me, I forgot about the competition, and I focused on making the right decisions. And it started off well. I had a solid entry, a long trade on US dollar Swiss franc. I was able to aggressively scale in twice according to my game plan. Overall, a solid return and a good first trade. This was followed by a bit of a loss that set me back. It was a bit of a rush trade, perhaps the nerves seeping in again and affecting the way that I was making decisions, but it's okay. I didn't panic, I stayed calm, focused on my system, and got my final entry. A short trade on gold, which was executed, I think, close to perfection, and ironically pushed me into gold place in the competition, at which point I said to the team, I'm done, I've had a roller coaster ride, my nerves have been frayed at times, and that's it. If you can beat that return, you deserve to win anyway. And that's where I left it. Alright, it's the moment you've been waiting for. The return for the month was 10.56%. I think we'll put the link to this MyFX book in the description box so you can see it, but I just want to show you now because if we continue trading this account, then this will change over time. But it was a 10.56% return, drawdown of 4%. So that means that even with the string of losses when I was over trading, from the peak it only ever dropped 4%. And let's look at some of the performance. First of all, over here you've got to ignore this last spike on this last day. It's just with MyFX book how they calculate trades that are not in currency pairs. This was the gold trade. It's saying that there was 544 pips profit, which was not the case. But down here we can see there were 19 trades taken with 58% of them being a profit. And I'm not sure how accurate that is because of it being a netting account and with scale-ins and scale-outs. I'm not sure how they account for that. But you can see average win about 70 pips, average loss 17 pips, so not bad in terms of risk return there. And if I continue trading this account, things will change over time, but you can always come down to here at the bottom and see that June 2020 was a 10.56% return. Obviously, as we discussed, I was over trading for the month and my performance wasn't that great during the time because of the pressure of the competition, but I calculated with how active I was with my trading as part of my game plan, with the same opportunities, if I'd stuck with my system and executed things properly, that return could have been at least double, maybe even more, with the same opportunities. But that's all just ifs and buts. In the end, my performance wasn't as good as I wanted, but still a 10.56% return with just a 4.07% drawdown. So overall, although I was disappointed in my performance, I do have to say that the outcome, the results, were pretty decent. Considering the rules of the competition that restricted our risk management and so on, to have a 10.56% return for 1 month of trading with a drawdown of just 4%, I think that was a decent outcome, especially under all of the pressure of the competition, of having my trading performance scrutinized by the community and my team, by having to back up the trash talk, which admittedly was my own fault. Under all of that pressure and the ups and downs, to have that outcome, I think, was a win. But more importantly, I think the month of trading and the competition were a lot of fun, and they were a big success because of how eye-opening the whole experience was. And so based on that, I have a few points that I wanted to cover because I think that new traders go through similar things to what I was going through for unnecessary reasons, and these can be overcome. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these problems I was seeing in my trading are typically what we see in new traders. But these are the symptoms, they're not necessarily the root cause problem. Now, when I did the deep dive into my own mindset and what was going on, I figured out that it was because of this sense of urgency and scarcity. This was an artificial environment that was being created because of the competition, but I think new traders go through similar things. They create this sense of urgency and scarcity on themselves as a result of how they're approaching their trading. And there are 3 areas that I think you need to focus on if you're seeing similar symptoms in your own trading. The first thing is to abandon arbitrary deadlines. Now, I know when we're setting goals, they need to be, time-based. There needs to be an end deadline for those. But when we do that with our trading, we end up creating this sense of urgency and scarcity. So when I talk about arbitrary deadlines, I'm talking about deadlines that don't necessarily need to be at that specific point in time, but we're choosing for it to be. So for new traders, it might be that you want to be a consistently profitable trader by the end of the year, or to hit XYZ return by next March, or to hit this amount of money in your account by the end of next year. Those are deadlines that are going to create this sense of urgency and scarcity. Now, for most goals, you want that sense of urgency that's going to push you forwards towards action. But with your trading, all that's going to do is rush you and cause you to overtrade, to see losses as a setback, and to feel that sense of scarcity with each and every opportunity, rather than focusing on your trading in the way that I do with my trading normally, outside of the competition, where it's one continuous thing. And this is also a point for more experienced traders who look at things like their monthly return. Now, I think it's important to be looking at your return over time to see when things are heading in the wrong direction and to be able to optimize and keep improving. But a monthly return is just an arbitrary date. So, if you have a few losing trades leading up to the end of the month and you end up with a losing month or a month that's not quite at your average return, that's going to change your mindset. So the next month, you're going to be thinking, last month was not a very good month, so this month needs to be a lot better, when actually it might have just been those last few days. Or what about when you're approaching the end of the month, you've got a few days left, and you see that your return for that month is below your normal average return? That's going to create that sense of urgency and scarcity and might lead you to doing things like overtrading just to get that return pushed up to what your normal average monthly return is, even though it's just an arbitrary date that you've set. So instead, you can think of your trading in the way that I look at mine. I know this is a long-term career, so monthly returns don't matter so much. It's my return over time. Maybe you could even look at your return as some sort of rolling average, so that no arbitrary dates are going to affect your decision making, whether consciously or subconsciously, because you might not even realize it's happening. So instead, you just focus on your longer-term performance, which should be heading in the right direction. The second point relates to that whole first point, and that is to not set trading goals based on hitting a certain return or a monetary target, like hitting a certain amount of capital. Now, I know that achieving that sort of return or, succeeding in terms of making a profit is important for trading. That's the whole point. We're trying to earn money. But if you focus on those being the target, all you're going to do is, again, create this false sense of scarcity and urgency where the losses feel like setbacks rather than part of the process. Which leads me on to the third point of what you should be focusing on instead, which is to figure out what factors lead to you trading in a good way that hits those returns, but you can control. So is it your risk management? Is it sticking to your system? Is it a certain daily routine? Is it a certain process you go through, a certain way of analyzing? What are the controllable factors that you can set goals based on that you know by focusing on those, you're going to get the good returns anyway? And the ironic thing is that by focusing on these things, just like I did towards the end of that competition, you end up getting the better returns anyway. Those of you that are focused just on hitting goals based on returns usually end up causing sort of obstacles for your own performance and creating these mental blocks subconsciously that you don't even know exist. Whereas those of you that are focused on the things you can control and trading in a consistent way and focusing on your system and doing the right things will achieve those returns anyway. Overall, not just in trading but in life in general, a really good rule of thumb is that the best way to deal with a problem is to take preventative action rather than having to treat it once it's already appeared. So when it comes to trading, think about how you can put yourself in the best possible position to succeed and get rid of all these obstacles and barriers, whether mental or otherwise, that are just going to hold you back. And if you want to know more about how I approach my trading normally, not necessarily in the competition, then there's a link for our free training that you'll find down below. If you like this video and you want to see more like this, where I'm talking about my own trading, then hit the like button, and you'll also find on screen a playlist which is all about my own experiences from trading. And if there are any other topics that you'd like us to cover in future videos like this one, leave a comment down below letting me know what that is, and we'll add those to the list. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.